Somebody with such a tremendous experience, I bet you have a lot of stories.
I do. Like, oh my God, they made a Netflix show after your game.
It probably was really easy for you to create a Fall Guy.
We did it in a couple hours. Oh yeah, let's do a competition. If somebody wins, or you get a couple $1,000.
How do you measure creative?
Everybody wants to know the magic formula.
Do you want to be an artist or not?
Do whatever you like best, whatever you enjoy most.
Hi, everyone. My name is Ninel Anderson. I'm CEO of Devoted Studios, and I'm your host at Devoted SpeakEasy. Tonight, we have an amazing guest with us. It's Alexander McKinney-Raphelt, who is currently a studio art director at Mediatonic, who was recently purchased by Epic Games. Alexander is an art director for one of the most beloved games, Fall Guys. I bet all of you have played that, and all of you miserably suffered in your first experience because when you jump in and there's so many skilled players and you're like, what is happening? Alexander, pleasure having you.
Thank you. I'm sorry.
No, I mean, it's as a female player, I feel like there should be more games on consoles. 'Cause I don't play on mobile. I just, it doesn't feel good for me because I have email popping up, Slack popping up. So like when I have a console in front of me, that is a dedicated experience. But as a female player, there's not really many games on the, on my Sony PlayStation for girls to play. I don't want to be shooting zombies, people's body pieces off. So Fall Guys been like a breath of fresh air for me. Thank you
That's
for
great.
that.
I'm glad you're here.
Well, besides Fall Guys and Alexander's experience as being an art director for Takes Two Social Point, I bet a lot of casual players know the games like Dragon City, which was a major hit in, I think, 2016, 17, around that time. And besides that, InnoGames, Gameforge, right? So
Yeah, that's true.
a huge career plus having your own studio of creating content for other companies. We can dive into that a little bit later, but somebody with such a tremendous experience, I bet you have a lot of stories.
I do. It was and is a total roller coaster. I love my job, and it's true what they say. As long as you have a passion for your job, it never feels like you're truly working. On the other side, you spend a lot of hours just what you love. And hey, where does my social life go?
Well, you create a social hub inside the game, and that's where your
Yeah,
social life goes, right?
that's
Um,
true.
so I would love to start with a question in regards to Fall Guys, because as somebody who creates content on a daily basis, I feel like there's this, I don't know, perception in the industry that art has to be, in order to be like art has to be extremely photorealistic. You have to have all these details and sculpted and all of that stuff, and that's the art, right? But as a player, I don't think we even consider things like that. I think it's whether it's visually appealing, whether it's fun. And I bet there was a lot of people were like, hey, it probably was really easy for you to create a Fall Guys, right? Which is, I
Totes
guess, not.
easy. We did it in a couple hours. No, just kidding. Um, Obviously, there was a long journey and a long way prior to creating Fall Guys. And I would say this: when when I was in art school and university, of course, you look up to artists who squeeze a lot of detail and a lot of noise and grit into their images. And some artists they enjoy like this, I don't know, this legendary status just because they have so many things going on in their art. And as a young kid who likes to draw, you think, okay, that's cool. That needs to be the goal. And I guess there are many games out there who need to look very hyper realistic and need to have tons of details. That's fine, but that's not the quality bar. That's not the ultimate goal for a game. Um, I think a game, if you want to deliver a nice cultural media product like a game, you have to make sure that the art is appropriate and that it fits the general vibe and intention of the game. That can be hyperreal, that can be stylized, cartoony, that can be very simple, that can look ugly on purpose, it can be
Hmm.
pixel look. Um, you just have to hit the right flavor. And some people go to an extreme and say art doesn't matter at all, which is not true, in my opinion, because the art, the sound, the experience, it drags you into the game and it keeps you inside the game. It gives you this cozy feeling of, hey, I'm part of this world. However, your game is shaped. If there's no correspondence and no resonance between game design and art, um, nobody wants to play this. And there are some examples out there that have this dissonance between game design and art. And unfortunately, those games sometimes can be successful, but mostly aren't. And that's why I think do whatever you like best, whatever you enjoy most. Don't try to chase the hyperreal style if it's not your thing. If it is your thing, cool, go for it. Don't try to be cartoony, um, but use your younger years to explore and
Yeah.
see what fits you.
And so I would assume the art Bible creation for a cartoony stylized project as a process is very different from a photorealistic one, because you can have a reference to a real world and what things make sense and what things, like which things don't, right? When I bet when creating Fall Guys and the color palettes, the shapes, all of that stuff, you have to spend quite a bit of time in order for other artists to then kind of take it from there. Like, can you tell me a little bit more of a creative process of creating an art Bible for a project like that?
That's a good one. I don't think an art Bible for uh, stylized or cartoony games is easier or quicker to do.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I would think it in some cases it might even be harder to do. When you create a game that has a very hyperreal, naturalistic look, you just gather examples that are out there that people know. Okay, yeah, this is how buildings look, this is how car look, this is how, I don't know, whatever looks, and you just have real life references and make sure you can somehow replicate that feeling into your game. When you create a stylized game, you still have to do this, but mixing
Mm-hmm.
up with your own imagination, with your own flavor and the style of your game. Um, so when we created Fall Guys and when we came up with the first designs, one rule, for example, was that every color in the game needed to be associated with candy. So all the colors are like vanilla, cherry, orange, whatever. So that we purposely stayed inside this very cutesy, sweet world. Um, we have things that you might see in the real world. After all, Fall Guys is heavily inspired by shows like American Gladiator, or
Mm-hmm.
in Europe, there's this other show, Takeshi's Castle, which is very popular.
Mm-hmm.
Where obviously we had a look and we had some video sessions back to the 80s and 90s, and we tried to a certain degree seek some inspiration on how they built their vinyl worlds and this
Mm-hmm.
rubbery worlds, which you can also find to a certain degree in Fall Guys. So we did this on purpose because we thought it would fit the world, not because we thought we need to save on draw calls or like polygons or
Mm-hmm.
anything that makes it easier to produce. This was all purpose driven. We thought this was best, and that's why we went for this stylus approach.
Got it. Well, I hope they're not going to be a season inspired by Netflix's Squid Game, like where everybody dies and gets
Oh my god.
ripped in pieces. What
I
can
know.
you do?
I got so many people reaching out like, oh my god, they made a Netflix show after your game. Like, no man.
Nope, nope. That one is a little more violent, to say
I
the
know. I know.
to say the least. Well, so was it would you say that Fall Guys are created by artists or by game designers? Like, whose idea was it? Because I know that it was a part of like an artist pitch or something like that, like a process within your company where everybody can pitch ideas. Like, how was it born?
Um, I have to give the credit to game design.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I have to give the credit to Joe, who
Mm-hmm.
was like the main game designer, the driver behind all of this. Um, this was born during a game jam. We
Mm-hmm.
love to run. We love to run game jams. So the way we do it, everybody runs game jams maybe a bit differently, but the way we do it, it takes at least 2 days. We have lots of teams that come up with ideas and cool things to just experiment, because it gives us the space and the freedom to fail and to fail
Mm-hmm.
fast, and
Mm-hmm.
it's okay. It's a protected, safe space, and the Fall Guys idea was something that was so visceral and so physical that everybody that saw the prototype instantly understood what it's all about. It's so simple. It's what kids do. You just run down the street, you know, and that's basically the game design. And like everybody knows the magic formula to game design. It's super easy to grasp, but very hard to master. That's what Fall
Mm-hmm.
Guys is in essence.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that resonated so well with the artists that basically the initial vision that was created was an instant hit. Um, Usually when you work in games, you have many iterations of, hey, how do the characters look like? How does the world
Yep.
look like?
Yep.
Um, but this time it was suspiciously easy. And I guess when two important groups of game production, game designers and artists, have this strong motivation and strong drive from the get-go, like, wow, this works so nicely together. Let's go. This affects everybody in the team positively. So, and I guess that's part of the magic why it's so well received and why we have such a
Mm-hmm.
positive, loving community.
I love that. And I feel like the big part of all that process is the customization of your little beanies, the
Yes.
little avatars. I bet, like, I mean, this Halloween, obviously, in the previous one, there's not many, little humans going from door to door and like treat or treating. But I'm sure next year there's going to be a lot of kiddos in Fallout Guy costumes, because I've seen on the internet the cosplay wisdom. Like, did you have inspiration from Halloween costumes? Like, how did that process of customization of the stuff go for you?
Yeah. Um, so at the very beginning, we just wanted to have something to distinguish all the beans, and we figured, okay, we can have different colors, we can have different patterns and textures, but there's only so much you can do. Um, Mind you, at the very beginning, the idea was to have over 100 characters at the same time running around.
Mm-hmm.
It was just too crazy. It was just pure noise.
Mm-hmm.
It was very hard to find your own bean, basically. So that's why we had to reduce it to 60 characters. So at least it's still very chaotic. There's still a lot of slapstick going on, but at least you can identify your own figure, on your own character in the game. And the idea from the beginning was to have different types of Fall Guys,
Mm-hmm.
like a clumsy one, or one with one leg, or the cool Fall Guy with the sunglasses, and we we pretty much identified it's okay if they all pretty much look the same from the very beginning as a canvas, and with the textures, the colors, and the costumes, the players being given the opportunity and the chance to like design his or her very own character, and that's why we started creating our very own costumes at the beginning, just randomly and just following our mantra, which is appreciate the weird and wonderful. And that's why we have a hot dog character. That's why we have a crazy chicken character. That's why we have a, a rainbow unicorn character. You know, um, this is all amazing, and I'm very happy that this costume idea was so radiant that we quickly started interpreting and working together with external IP partners to have costumes of very important other IPs that might not be compatible on first sight with Fall
Mm-hmm.
Guys. Let's say we were pretty concerned when we had our first cooperation with Doom, for example,
That was
and
the first thing I was like, he was probably about to talk about zombies or something like that, or crazy monsters. Mm-hmm.
but as soon as I saw like the first concept, like the bean with the Doom guy costume, was like, wow, sold. This is so bizarre and weird. I love it, and
Oh, I love
ever
that.
since it's spread like wildfire. There's so many cool people and so many cool IPs working with us currently. there will be so much cool stuff in the future happening soon, and
Mm.
I'm so glad that the actual Fall Guys, the beans, are now the canvas for so many other beloved IPs.
Oh, that feels so warm. That feels so inspiring. Thank you for sharing that. I would assume
Of
though,
course.
like when you said that, the characters could be like wearing sunglasses and stuff like that, but like when you're running and you're seeing pretty much yourself from behind, right? You can't really just if it's little elements, then it would be really hard to understand. Like honestly, my first time I was playing Fall Guys, um I didn't realize that I was dead up until the end. I was like, this is me running, right? And I was like, why am I controlling this thing and it's not
Uh,
really doing anything? And then I was like,
I
oh,
know, I know.
I was dead. So yeah, I was
This is kind of
looking
like
to
this is kind of like when you give your younger brother the disconnected PlayStation controller.
yeah, that's how I
Yeah.
felt. I was like, oh my god, I'm so miserably bad with it. I can't even control this thing. Like, what am I
Oh
missing?
man, I'm
So
sorry.
no, no, I guess that's how it's supposed to be. I don't question game design and things like that. But yeah, it was an experience on its own. But yeah, I feel like if you had only little elements, that would be when you have this giant everything happening simultaneously, you have to make them stand out. And I guess the one of the motivation for humans to do the customization is that you want to stand out, you want to be the coolest thing. One part of me is like, how can you be watching everybody else if you have so many obstacles and things that you like, how can you even point attention to anyone else? Like, was that a question for you guys?
Yeah, definitely. It was also a question of like motivating players and keeping
Hmm.
them in the game. Obviously, um, I mean, it's easy. The more you play, the more crowns you can potentially win, and the really cool outfits cost a couple of crowns. And this is like the only way of getting them. You cannot buy them directly. You have to
Hmm.
be you have to be a good player and just win
Hmm.
rounds. And maybe you get the, I don't know, the Mountain King costume. You know,
Ooh.
or at the early days we also had golden costume. So of
No
course it's a
more
motivation,
golden,
but
no more
yeah,
golden costumes.
there is, but sometimes this is again, this is like a game design decision because there's
Hmm.
some levels where we divide the teams into several colors, and the entire team is just yellow or red or blue,
Hmm.
and it was very hard to distinguish the yellow versus the golden costume, for example.
Got it.
Um, so, but you can still see the silhouette, obviously. So, there's many cool costumes that you can just get even being a standard player. They still look cool. You can buy the DLC packs with special costumes, but some special things you can only win and only get if you're a really good player. And I think that's one of the aspects why Fall Guys is so competitive.
Mm. It is very competitive. It is extremely competitive. As
Yeah.
somebody who played it, it is. Well, was that thought through and created by the tech art team, or like whose job was that to design the customization system, or was it an engineering team?
At
Was it
the beginning,
collaboration?
at the beginning it was more a concept art task. And at the
Okay.
beginning, we wanted to make sure that everything is defined. Obviously, what makes
Hmm.
a fall guy. But as we progressed and as we saw, okay, we're having some edge cases here. If characters have like very large heads, or crazy boots, or a jetpack, or
Hmm.
other things, those were hard to realize, and we had to come up with a certain zones of the characters that can be modeled and some can't. But there were so many aspects that you don't realize when you make this game at first. The very first batch of costumes was very basic. They still look cute, and I love them. I have an actual toy of the rainbow unicorn.
Yay!
um, and those always work, but extreme cases like Long Guy, for example, nobody could foresee that this was actually in demand and that people wanted to have such costumes, and that's why on a later process it was combined effort of tech artists, 3D artists, and also, again, concept artists to find out the right solution, what can be done and what's impossible.
Do you take like ideas from the community as well? Like, do you have like a community submission process, like people coming up with their own designs and sending you guys? Like, is that a process for you as well, or you solely rely on the internal team coming up with the ideas?
That's a tricky one. Um, we try and we want to listen to our community as best as we can, really. We have a stellar community team. Like
Mm.
they they know social media. Like, wow.
Hmm. Hmm.
I feel like an old millennial, but it's okay. They know how to do all the platforms, and just always hit the right tone, and know how to talk to certain demographics. And
Yeah.
from an artist perspective, it's a very double-edged sword when a company approaches you like, oh yeah, let's do a competition, and if somebody wins, we make this design into the game, or you get a couple $1,000s or whatever.
Hmm.
Because on the way, of course, people generate a ton of art, and in some contracts, maybe the company reserves the right to reuse those designs for the game.
Hmm.
So we, we we encourage fan art, and we love fan art. That's great, but we don't go and exploit those people, and just take their art they did for free and put it into our game. Um,
That's
we,
that's very
yeah,
respectful. That's really good.
the
As
temptation
well.
is really there, but there's some again, there's some edge cases. Um, for example, there was this guy Hoggy on Twitter,
Hmm. Hmm.
um, huge fan of Fall Guys, and he set himself the incredible challenge to come up with a new costume design every day of the year. So,
How
so
many days he lasted?
he lasted 365 days. So he
Is
presented
he
back
employed
this.
by you guys now?
No, he's not. I have to go back to Twitter and see what he actually does. But he, like, all his designs are lovely, and
Hmm.
of course we didn't take them, and we didn't
Hmm.
put them in our game. So creative, so amazing, but he did like a design for himself, like how
Hmm.
he would like to see himself as Hoggy, as the Twitter persona he is,
Hmm.
and now Hoggy lives in Fall Guys for real, as a real character that he can play.
Oh, thank you so much, everyone. I swear, like I can't thank every Fall Guys, Mediatonic, all of you. I can't thank you I can't thank you enough for this. Like this is.
And
Oh.
he was delighted to see that he's now memorized forever in this game. So this is like a cool thing that you can do when you actually talk to the artists, and
Yeah.
it's everybody agrees that it's a cool thing to do. You so consent, like in every aspect of life, is also important for video games.
Love that. Love that. Oh my God. I love those kind of like inspiring stories when the community gets to interact with the game, not just sitting in front of a TV, but like have a real relationship. And in this case, being a forever in the game person. That's really cool. Um, I know that through your time at Mediatonic, you had two different positions as art manager and as an art director. Um, can you tell me more about the difference of these two positions and what that entitles, and which one of them speaks more to your heart? Mhm.
um, I think I do the last part first. I'm a total hybrid being.
Mhm.
Um, that means that I care a lot about the team and the actual the human beings that work
Mhm.
for the company, because every artist that comes in brings a story. Every artist that comes in has some sort of baggage,
Mhm.
and by sharing their magic, aka their art, with us, they add a different flavor to the final product, which in this case is Fall Guys. So from an art manager's perspective, I would be somebody who knows what good looks like, but at the same time
Mhm.
making sure that 80% of my work goes into people ops, making sure that there's always development for artists, making sure that everybody feels seen, making sure that it's a fair and good environment for people. And
Mhm.
by good environment, I mean something that's real. I've experienced places where there's some sort of like fake harmony and fake smiles, which can be worse than a straight up toxic environment, for example. Um, so somebody who works more for the team on an abstract layer and not caring so much about the actual art and giving art direction. Whereas as an art director, you have to pay more attention to the fidelity of a game, how a game looks like, providing a vision, helping other senior artists in the team um, to get to this vision, and to always have an open ear to what the team and the community has to say. But again, focusing more of your time on the actual art of the game, how it's going to look like, how it's going to work on different platforms, and making sure that you're always connected to the other departments of the studio, with product, with game design, HR, and at the same time, yes, also taking care of your team, but your opinion, and also maybe just drawing and painting something, is asked of you instead of just staying with the team.
Okay. And there's one cool thing I think you wrote is performance review for artists.
Yes.
And well, if I think about performance review for, like, a salesperson or somebody who works with numbers, you reached your KPIs and stuff like that, and you're successful. When talking about the performance review for artists, what are the key things that are measured, and how do you measure creative, for example? Like, tell me more about that process. I'm genuinely very interested.
Yeah. Everybody wants to know the magic formula.
Eureka!
So, first of all, I think it's impossible to have 100%. Everybody thinks the same. Everybody agrees on the exact same percentage to measure performance of artists. I think if you approach the topic performance appraisals for artists from a coaching perspective, that leaves a bit of fuzzy room. That's the right way to go. Of course, it makes sense to set goals. To be like, hey, for this year, I wish for you to have at least, I don't know, 20 characters approved from 50 designs you make, for example, as a very, just to give so and so numbers. But when it comes to the actual appraisals, sometimes people need some guidance to find, okay, do they want to progress within a field where they're more hands-on artists, like becoming from senior to principal artists, for example? Or do those people some guidance to maybe become managers and art directors or lead artists? How can I help them to become better managers and better understanding their team? So it's really more of a coaching process, looking what were the big failings of last year, and seeing what could have been other strategies and how could we solve those strategies better in the next period. So when I came into the company, there was like no real appraisal system. I think it helps if you have documents set up where you can always go back and see, okay, what did we talk about a half year ago? Did we talk about maybe not only seeing your very own tasks? Maybe we talked about how about I interact more with game design? How about I interact more with production? How about I interact more with tech art, that my designs are already optimized and work flawlessly in the engine? How does the artist react towards art critique and feedback? Is there always like a defensive mode, like, no, I love this character? Or is there like a approach of active listening? Okay, please, as you said, I understand it would be better if the character had like a red hat or whatever. And giving the artist the tools to just grow better. It's different from a classic appraisal, like a salesperson. You didn't reach the KPIs. It's impossible to do with artists. I think proper appraisals for artists need to be born out of a coaching aspect of mentality, to give them the tools for the future. It is fuzzy, yes, but it requires a lot of work in the sense that you actually need to know each artist individually. You need to know their stories. You need to know what's their intrinsic motivation, where they want to be in the next year, basically. Because I think the special thing with artists is that they already love to paint and to draw. So there's a general very high baseline of motivation and happiness, and how can we shape this raw creative energy into something that makes them happy, but also makes the product look good. And appraisals can be a tool for that.
Do you have that defined for your team? Like there's like, I don't know, a confidence page, like things that an art director, if you want to like progress into that role, these are the things that you need to be hitting, and it's visible for everyone, or it's more on a person to person level?
No, I'm super transparent with everything I do, and super transparent with what I'm looking for. There's a very extensive page with all the requirements that are needed in order to progress into a certain direction.
That's cool.
It started as a humble Excel sheet, and now it's become this mega document. But
mega
it's
document
okay.
meaning mega amount of things that you need to comply with.
No, just going more into detail and explaining more. It's not about making it more difficult.
Okay.
But again, I could create a super document of 3,000 pages. It would still not be accurate enough. It's always a mix of hard skills and soft skills, how you sit within the team. It's never, I never call somebody out and be like, okay, you're a senior artist now because I have decided that, the, the team also has to sense and to see, wow, actually this person is really good. Might be better to promote this person. And I try to be, like I said, transparent as possible. Everybody can read this document. And I've had lots of conversations in the past just going through certain aspects. Hey, Alex, what does this mean? How can I improve on this area? So it's accessible for everybody, and has been a good guidance so far.
Well, that's good. I mean, the transparency in that aspect, where for people to know where to go rather than being left in the decision of a person. I think that's awesome. Thank you for having that. I hope this is an inspiration for everybody else. One of the things that caught my eyes in your experience was being an innovation manager at InnoGames, which I haven't really seen in a lot of other places. And the things, my understanding, like it was like a rapid prototyping team that could spit out as many prototypes and stuff to like spark ideas for the development, which I guess that's how Fall Guys came out as well.
Of course. So InnoGames was at a point where we had a couple of like blockbuster games that were cool and were generating enough money to give us a certain sense of tranquility and be like feeling safe in the industry, because we knew, okay, those games have existed for like 5 or even 10 years, and people still play them. So there's like a certain income and certain money coming in that gives us a stability where we don't have the pressure to always come up with new features every week, let's say, So it gave us the opportunity to take a step back and be like, okay, who do we want to be in the future? And we came to the conclusion that we cannot generate cool game ideas or cool game concepts on the side. We need a dedicated space. We need dedicated people to come up with concepts that would be pitched for C-level all the time, basically, as future games and future new concepts. So the idea was to initially only have game designers in that circle of people, but I suggested mixing up with artists, with producers, with actual developers, 3D developers, front-end developers, also tech artists. So we had this very eclectic group of all sorts of people. I think at peak times we were around 13, 14 people. And the idea was to, having like a never-ending game jam and pitching ideas and games. And we had our very own, very strict pitching process. If something wasn't fun in the very first day, we would not pursue the idea. Next idea, like ruthless. And on the other side, we would also think, okay, what are cool things that are not on the backlog for our games that we could now have more time into exploring and coming up with cool add-ons to our already existing games. Like there were so many features that came out of this lab that are now living inside games like Elvenar or Forge of Empires, because we just had a dedicated space, a protected space where we were allowed to fail fast, and nobody would punish us. And since I'm not a tech expert, I'm not a developer, but I was always the guy who's trying to have a look into the future, and somebody who was always pushing for new ideas, new technologies, and for a mindset of that failing is okay, and it's okay to just come up with ideas. Maybe they're complete shit, but okay, at least you tried it out. Let's go with the next idea. And that's why I was being assigned to this role. It was magic. We had a lot of fun.
Oh, that feels amazing. I feel like when you're a part of a game development team that has a real user base and a huge user base, you're trying to serve all of those needs, and you're like prioritizing the stuff, and the players are like, you are making my life miserable because of this and this feature, but this feature is on the bottom of the priority list because there's larger things to tackle. Even like to have time to think and have a dedicated group that literally can just prototype and in isolation, I think that's a really, really good move.
Yeah. But there's another aspect I want to mention here. That's not only about the actual things that you can do for the games. It can be a very mighty tool for team morale. When you work a long time on live games, team fatigue is a real thing. Yes, the games are cool, but after working 5 years and always doing the same type of buildings or monsters or whatever, there's a certain fatigue rolling in. And of course, you want to keep your artists fresh, and everybody really, not only artists. So we tried to have a rolling system where everybody would have the opportunity to come into the lab and generate cool ideas and enrich the entire portfolio of the game. So when we started it, people were appreciative and they liked the idea, but there was also some disgruntlement of like, oh, okay, cool, good for them, I guess. They get to make cool things all the time. But so we had to make sure that everybody actually gets some time in the lab and can work with the cool kids, so to say, and come up with cool ideas. We also try to engage with everybody of the entire company to share their ideas with us. And if we thought that somebody would be cool, we just would invite this person over. And we had QA people pitching great game ideas. We had HR coming up with cool ideas. So people you wouldn't expect to be directly involved into game creation. So it was a bit bumpy, but at the end we made sure that everybody enjoyed it the most.
With that in mind, actually, one of the things in your previous experience, you also worked on IP-based games. One of them is Star Wars. I think it was released recently, right? Or it was
they're about to.
Right? Because there was like an announcement trailer, right, that came out like I think a few months ago, and so one of the cool things that I saw in your resume is the creation of repomatics, which is, I guess, is not really a common thing in the game development and maybe an underestimated part of it. Like I want to know more about that process and how that process affects game production, how it serves it, how it supports it, and stuff like that.
Yeah. For the sake of always crediting people, so this initiative was born together with my colleague Richard, who's also an art director at Metro Motion, and we talked about the concept of having a so-called repomatic, because creating a Star Wars game is not easy, because there's so many Star Wars fans that are hypercritical of something that doesn't look exactly like an X-wing, like a certain type of X-wing. They would tell you that that's the worst looking game ever. So we surely did not have time at the very beginning to show our visual intent and to show management and everybody else, like the decision makers, because we had to make sure that if we want to create a high fidelity game, we don't have time and team and bandwidth to create all the assets that we want to show for a final quality vertical slice. So we just had to take elements from the movies, everything that was somehow Star Wars related, music, other games, comics, everything out there, and mesh it together into a rip-o-matic where you rip content from other sources and make it into something that not necessarily represents the final visual quality of your game, but it gives you a vibe. This is like, okay, cool. This is I can see it. I can sense it. This is more or less what the artists think it's going to look like. But at the end, this can only be an initial tool to create some sort of excitement, to create a common sense. Okay, this is what we want to achieve. But right now we don't have the resources. But hey, one day we're going to get there. And at the end, we had a beautiful movie of like 2 minutes. Took us forever to make because we had to cut it right, and we had to find the right music. But I think this is something I love to do for games because it conveys a certain atmosphere, it conveys a certain vibe, and it makes sure that everybody's aligned. Okay, someday this will be our product, and I'm okay with it. And yeah, it doesn't matter what genre or type of game you're making. If you have some kind of IP that already is out there and exists, just rip it apart and make it your own. It's a tremendous tool.
Well, I think that would be it. I think we have a good hour of content.
It's
Unless
amazing.
there's any areas that you feel like you want to touch base on.
I think the pandemic has shown how important games are, how important spaces are where you can just escape, where you can be a tiny colorful bean running through crazy obstacles, or a superhero, or a monster, or a party of heroes, whatever. And that this is actually something that's good for society and humanity as a whole. Games used to be like, oh yeah, it's corrupting our youth, it's wasting so much hours into video games. Actually, video games was one of the big saviors for many kids out there during the pandemic. And just having this awareness when you play games, also games like Fall Guys, it's a good thing. Don't think that we make those games to just take all your money. It's a nice side effect, but that's not the general purpose. We made Fall Guys because, like I said, we appreciate the weird and wonderful, and it's nice when people also recognize that.
Looking forward to seeing more stuff coming out, especially LinkedIn says that you guys are working on some to be announced stuff. So can wait to see that. And maybe in our next episode, we're going to chat about your guys' new success. Thank you so much, Alexander. Thank you for your time, and bye, everyone.